I did everything right. At least that is what it looked like from the outside. I had a steady job, a church that felt like home, a routine that kept my faith orderly and respectable. I prayed before work. I volunteered on weekends. I read scripture at night. Even when I was tired, I was not reckless. I was not drifting. I was building a life that made sense. And then God asked me to walk away from it. I did not hear his voice in thunder. There was no dramatic moment at first. It began quietly, almost politely, as if he did not want to interrupt the life I had worked so hard to stabilize. But before I tell you about that, you need to understand where I was. I had moved to the city 3 years earlier for work. I was trained as a civil engineer, the kind who liked systems, order, and things that fit together cleanly. Roads that led somewhere, structures that held weight without complaint. I believed faith worked the same way. If you built it correctly, followed the rules, and stayed disciplined, everything would stand. The church I joined fit that belief perfectly. New Hope Fellowship was not flashy. It was steady, predictable in the best way. The kind of place where people remembered your name and noticed if you missed a Sunday. The worship was sincere, not showy. The sermons were practical. Obedience, integrity, faithfulness over time. I settled in quickly, joined a small group, started helping with community outreach projects. Some Saturdays we cleaned up neighborhoods. Other times we delivered food to families who needed it. It felt good to be useful. For the first time in a long while, I felt grounded. That is where I met her. She was already involved in everything, coordinating worship schedules, helping in children's ministry, organizing service days. She had a way of moving through the church that felt natural, like she belonged there in a way I was still learning. I noticed her long before I spoke to her, not because she demanded attention, but because she did not. When she sang, it never felt like a performance. When she prayed, it was not rehearsed. She listened more than she talked, served without needing recognition. What stood out most was how comfortable her faith looked. It was not strained, not anxious. She did not speak as if she were trying to convince herself God was real. She lived as if she already knew. Our first real conversation happened after a long volunteer day. We were stacking chairs in the fellowship hall, the room mostly empty by then. She thanked me for helping. I joked that I was still trying to earn my place. She smiled and said, "You already have one." That should have been a small moment. It was not. From there, we kept finding ourselves in the same spaces, group discussions, planning meetings, late evenings after church events, cleaning up in comfortable silence. Conversation came easily, not forced, not rushed. She asked thoughtful questions about my work, about my faith, about why I moved here in the first place. I found myself answering honestly, even when the answers were unfinished. I noticed something else too. Being around her made my faith feel quieter, less like effort, less like discipline. It felt natural to pray with her, easy to talk about God without sounding certain or polished. That comfort felt like confirmation. We started spending time outside church, coffee after Bible study, walks through the neighborhood when schedules lined up. Nothing dramatic, nothing secretive. It all felt clean. Eventually, I asked her if she wanted to be intentional about seeing where this could go. She did not hesitate. "Yes," she said, simply, calmly, like she had already considered the question. That was the beginning of the safest happiness I had ever known. Our relationship did not burn fast. It settled. We talked about family, about calling, about what kind of lives we hope to build. She spoke often about serving her community long term, about being present, rooted, available. I told her about my work, my plans, and the projects I wanted to lead. I did not talk much about the restlessness I sometimes felt, the one I could not quite explain, the one that showed up late at night when everything else was quiet. It did not seem important anymore. Loving her made that restlessness fade into the background. Being with her felt like arriving, like I had finally landed where I was supposed to stay. Even my prayers changed. They became lighter, less searching, more grateful. I thanked God for her often, asked Him to protect what we were building, to bless it, to keep it steady. Looking back, I see what I was doing. I was asking God to bless a decision I had already made. At the time, I did not question it. Everything aligned, our values, our faith, our vision for life. People noticed, encouraged us, joked about our future. Even the church leadership seemed pleased. From the outside, this relationship looked like wisdom, like reward, like God honoring faithfulness with something good. I believed that too. I began to imagine the future in small, ordinary ways, shared routines, a home near the church, stability, service, a life that made sense. And yet, beneath all of that, something subtle began to shift. Not in her, in me. During my quiet time one morning, a verse stopped me longer than usual. It was not unfamiliar. I had read it before, but that day it felt heavier. There is a way that seems right to a man, but its end is not life. I closed my Bible and sat there longer than I planned. The words lingered. Not accusing, not loud, just present. I told myself I was overthinking. Everyone feels nervous before big commitments. That did not mean anything was wrong. Later that week, a sermon touched on obedience. Not dramatic obedience, not public sacrifice, but the quiet kind. The kind no one applauds, the kind that costs you privately. I listened carefully, felt unsettled, then dismissed it. I had learned how to explain away discomfort, but God was not finished. In prayer, I began to notice how much of my attention revolved around preserving what I had, how little space I left for asking what He wanted next. One night, alone in my apartment, I tried to pray the way I used to, without agenda, without plans, just presence. The silence felt different. I sensed a question forming, one I did not ask out loud. What if this is not about sin? What if it is about direction? That thought scared me more than anything else could have. Because if something is wrong, you can fix it. But if something is simply not aligned, the only solution is surrender. I pushed the thought away. I was not ready to listen yet. The next few weeks moved forward like nothing had changed. From the outside, everything was still steady. Work deadlines, church commitments, shared meals, and familiar laughter. If anything, life felt fuller. Busier in a good way. So kind of busy that convinces you that momentum itself is proof you are headed in the right direction. But internally, something was no longer quiet. The verse I had read that morning stayed with me longer than it should have. It would surface at inconvenient times, while driving to work, while listening to sermons, even during moments of laughter, not loud, not condemning, just present. I told myself it was normal. Discernment takes time. Faith is not always neat. I had been taught that walking with God meant wrestling sometimes, so I wrestled. But I wrestled without loosening my grip on what I wanted. Around that time, the church hosted a weekend leadership gathering. Nothing unusual. Speakers from nearby congregations, workshops on service and spiritual growth. I signed up without much thought. One of the sessions focused on calling, not ministry roles, not titles. Calling in the deeper sense, the work God designs a person for long before anyone notices, the kind of assignment that shapes how you see the world. The speaker was older, soft-spoken. He did not raise his voice. He did not try to inspire. He simply spoke as someone who had lived long enough to regret what he ignored. He said something that stayed with me. God rarely removes good things to punish us. Most of the time, He removes them because they are blocking something greater. I felt my chest tighten. He continued, "You can do everything right and still be wrong if you are walking in someone else's calling instead of your own." I shifted in my seat, looked around the room. Everyone else seemed calm, taking notes, nodding politely. I wanted the discomfort to pass. It did not. That night I went home and tried to pray it away. Asked God to bring peace, to quiet my thoughts, to reassure me that I was imagining things. Peace did not come. Instead, memories surfaced. Moments I had buried because they no longer fit the life I was building. Late nights in college sketching, ideas that were not for clients but for places I had never been. Reading about communities without infrastructure. Places where buildings were not just structures but lifelines. Feeling a pull toward work that mattered beyond comfort. I remembered conversations with mentors who had asked where I saw myself long term. Remembered how quickly I had learned to give safe answers. I can serve God anywhere. That phrase returned now with a weight I had never attached to it. It was true, but it was incomplete. Yes, I could serve God anywhere. But had He asked me to serve Him somewhere specific? That question followed me into my relationship. Not as doubt about her, not as suspicion, but as an awareness of difference. She spoke often about staying close to family, about being present in her community, about continuity, building something steady over time. It was beautiful. It was faithful. It was also not what stirred in me. I noticed how often I redirected conversations about the future, how easily I assumed compromise would happen later, that things would work themselves out once we were committed enough. I did not say these things out loud, not to her, not to anyone. Instead, I prayed harder, or at least, I prayed louder. I asked God to clarify, to confirm, to bless what we had. I fasted, journaled, quoted scripture back to Him, reminded Him of how aligned everything looked. Still, the silence remained. One evening after a long day, I sat alone and realized something unsettling. My prayers had become negotiations. I was not asking God what He wanted. I was asking Him to agree with me. That realization frightened me. I tried once more to pray honestly, not with words rehearsed, not with conclusions already drawn. I asked a different question. God, what am I avoiding? I did not get an answer right away. Days later, during a men's breakfast at church, a visiting pastor shared his testimony. He talked about turning down opportunities because they were good, respectable, and wrong for him. He spoke about years lost because he mistook approval for calling. Then he said something that felt directed at me alone. God will let you succeed at the wrong thing if that is what it takes to get your attention. That sentence landed heavy. I did not leave feeling inspired. I left feeling exposed. I began to notice how easily I dismissed anything that threatened my comfort, how quickly I explained away restlessness as ambition, how often I assumed that peace meant permission. I was not living in rebellion, I was living in avoidance. One night, unable to sleep, I sat on the floor of my living room. No music, no distractions, just quiet. I spoke out loud, slowly. God, I want what you want, not what looks good, not what feels safe. Show me the truth. Even as I said it, fear followed close behind. What if the truth disrupted everything? What if clarity cost me something I loved? I sat there, longer than I expected. Nothing dramatic happened, no voice, no vision, but something shifted. I stopped trying to convince God. I started listening. 2 weeks later, I attended a regional conference on behalf of the church. She stayed behind because of work. We said goodbye casually. Neither of us sensed what was coming. On the final night, there was a prayer session. People moved forward in small groups. I hesitated, then followed. An older woman prayed for me. She did not know my name beyond what I had given. She did not ask questions. She began to pray softly, then paused. Her tone changed. God is trying to get your attention, she said gently. There's a decision you're about to make. It looks right, it feels faithful. But it is not the path he opened. My breath caught. She continued, if you choose it, you will still serve God, but you will always wonder what you left behind. When she finished, I stood there frozen. I asked her how she knew. She shook her head. I only speak what I am given. You will need to take this back to God, fully, without bargaining. I drove home that night instead of staying until morning. The road felt longer than usual. The city lights blurred. My thoughts refused to settle. By the time I reached my apartment, it was past midnight. I did not turn on the lights. I knelt where I stood and finally stopped defending myself. I told God everything. My love, my fear, my reluctance, my buried calling. My exhaustion from pretending I did not hear him. And then I asked the question I had avoided for months. What do you want me to do? The answer did not come immediately. But when it did, it changed everything. The room stayed quiet longer than I expected. I knelt there with my head bowed, hands open, waiting for something dramatic. A feeling, a rush of peace. Anything that would soften what I feared might come next. Instead, there was clarity. Not loud, not emotional, clear in the way truth often is when you finally stop resisting it. I sensed God speaking to the part of me that already knew. You are trying to build a life that feels faithful without following the path I prepared for you. The words settled slowly. I did not argue at first. I waited, hoping for adjustment, for revision, for a version of the answer that allowed everything to stay the same. None came. Instead, memories returned. Not randomly, but deliberately. Moments I had ignored because they complicated the life I was choosing. The pull toward work that served people I would never meet otherwise. The ache I felt when I read about places where infrastructure was absent and hope felt fragile. The conversations I had cut short because they asked too much of me. I had not forgotten my calling. I had postponed it. I did not design you for comfort, the truth continued quietly. I designed you for service that will stretch you beyond what you can control. My chest tightened. Thought of her immediately, of her love for home, for consistency, for presence, the way she spoke about building something lasting in one place, the way her faith expressed itself through long-term care, not departure. I realized something I had never said out loud. If we stayed together, one of us would have to shrink. Either I would bury the calling God had been patient enough to wait for, or I would ask her to abandon a life she was never meant to leave. Neither option honored God. Neither option honored love. That understanding hurt more than any direct command could have. I stayed on the floor for hours, not crying the way movies depict grief, but heavy, weighted like something inside me had finally accepted what it had resisted for months. By the time the sun began to rise, I knew what obedience would cost me. It would cost me her. I did not tell her immediately. I needed time to understand what I was being asked to do before I tried to explain it. I needed to sit with the grief privately before I shared it. The next days were the hardest of my life. Every interaction felt fragile. Every laugh felt borrowed. I watched her talk about future plans with such sincerity, unaware that the future was already shifting beneath my feet. I realized then how dangerous it is to receive clarity alone. I felt isolated by obedience before I ever acted on it. When I finally asked her to talk, my hands shook. We met somewhere familiar, neutral, a place that had once felt safe. I told her everything, not dramatically, not defensively, slowly, carefully, with as much honesty as I could manage. I told her about the calling I had buried, about the clarity that had come, about the truth that loving her did not erase the assignment God had given me. She listened quietly, did not interrupt, did not argue. Her silence was worse than anger would have been. When she finally spoke, her voice was steady, though her eyes were not. "I always knew you were restless," she said. "I just thought loving me would make it go away." That sentence broke something in me. We sat there longer than we should have, saying things we did not want to say, acknowledging truths we had both sensed but never named. This was not betrayal, it was alignment. But alignment still hurts. We prayed together one last time, not for restoration, not for reversal, but for obedience, for peace, for courage to walk separate paths without bitterness. When we stood to leave, there was no dramatic goodbye, no closure that wrapped grief neatly, just loss. The weeks that followed were quiet. Church felt different. Familiar spaces felt heavier. People noticed the absence but did not ask. I learned how lonely obedience can feel when it is not visible. There was no immediate replacement for what I had surrendered. No reassurance that I had done the right thing beyond the quiet knowing that I had finally stopped resisting God. Some days I questioned everything. Other days I remembered why clarity matters more than comfort. Eventually, the calling that had once felt distant began to resurface with purpose. Conversations opened, opportunities emerged, not quickly, not easily, but honestly. God did not rush to fill the space she left. He let it stay open long enough for me to understand what I had given up and why it mattered. Looking back, I see now that God did not take something from me. He returned me to myself, and in doing so, He honored both of us. Sometimes God's answer is not about right and wrong. Sometimes it is about timing, direction, and trust. And sometimes obedience does not look like blessing at first. It looks like loss. But loss, when it is chosen in faith, is never wasted. Before this story ends, I want to ask you something personal. What is the one thing you are scared to let go of? It might be a relationship that looks right but feels heavy. A plan you worked hard to build. A version of life that makes sense on paper but keeps you restless inside. If you are willing, type it in the comments. Not for judgment, not for answers from strangers. Just as an act of honesty before God. Sometimes naming what we are holding on to is the first step toward freedom. Let us pray. God of truth and mercy, you see the things we cling to and the fears beneath them. You know how hard it is to release what feels safe, familiar, and good. Give us the courage to trust you more than our comfort. Help us surrender what is not aligned with your will, even when it costs us deeply. Where there is grief, bring peace. Where there is confusion, bring clarity. And where obedience feels lonely, remind us that you walk with us every step of the way. Amen. If this story spoke to you, take a moment to sit with it. God is patient, and He is faithful with what we place in His hands.